Hello, Berlin. Thank you so much for coming to our talk. And yeah, welcome to... Oh, might be a little bit of a delay, maybe.
Yeah, it's not working.
Ah,
Great start.
good stuff.
Let me try this one.
I think no, it is that one. The clicker. Does it need to be click closer?
Oh, OK.
OK. From Tableau to Tab-WOAH, standardizing account management dashboards at Just Eat. So a few months ago, applications opened to speak here, and Mark and I are really excited to talk about our journey towards standardization and where we've centralized part of our visualization function, where we've built long-lasting, global, and gold standard toolkits, and really raised the game with how we're using Tableau at Just Eat.
It's been a really painful process with lots of ups and downs, but we're delighted to be with you here today to share our key takeaways from our journey. So, OK, my name's Mark Corbridge. I've been working at Just Eat for 3 years now. Started off as a BI analyst for sales, but have now specialized in data visualization. And I've been using Tableau for those full 3 years. I'm very passionate about self-serve analytics and even more passionate about hiking. So I'm just back from Scotland, where I just climbed a few mountains. And also, as you can see from the picture, I build a mean snow dog.
My name is Jamie. I joined Just Eat on Valentine's Day last year. It was love at first bite. Bit of a data whiz, unofficial Tableau evangelist. I'm just a big fan of the product. Other things I'm a fan of include dogs and Newcastle United Football Club for my sins. And there I am with good old mate.
So here's what you'll get out of this session. So first, we'll teach you a little bit about Just Eat and how we approach reporting. After that, we'll get to the main event of our presentation, which is all about our reporting standardization journey. So like I said, we've had a lot of ups and downs with this, but we're really proud of the journey we've done over the last year and all the changes we've made. So hopefully, if you've been having similar problems to the ones we've been having up until that point, then you'll be able to take some learnings from our experiences and have a much easier time than we did. To really help you on your way, Jamie's going to give you some pro technical tips that will help you standardize your dashboards so much more easier. And all through this presentation, we're going to be using the example of the first project we did in our standardization journey, which was all about account management dashboards. So once you've taken you through the process of how we created those dashboards, Jamie will give you a juicy demo of how they're really helping our sales team. And also, throughout this whole presentation, we've given you our 10 golden nuggets of advice. These are our top takeaways on how to really do well in your own standardization journey. So first, a little bit about Just Eat. Just Eat is a leading global marketplace for online food delivery. What that basically means is it's one of those websites or apps you can go on after a long, hard day of data visualization and get food delivered straight to your door. It was started in 2001 in a basement in Denmark, and since then it has grown massively. It's now headquartered in the UK, where it's on the FTSE 100, but it also operates in 11 other markets around the world on 4 different continents, under brands such as Skip the Dishes, iFood, and Menulog. We're not currently operating in Germany, but hopefully next time you're in Italy or Spain or Switzerland or France, we'll give us a go. Like I say, we have grown massively over the 18 years we've been in business. We now have over 100,000 restaurants on the platform, serving 25 million active customers. And of course, that sort of scale needs some great employees. So we have 3,000 employees, all loving data. In fact, Just Eat is one of the best companies I've worked for when it comes to really loving data and wanting to make data-driven decisions. And Tableau's been a big part of that. We've had that since 2013, and we now have hundreds of desktop users creating content which is viewed by over half the company every single month. And of course, to create that sort of content, we need a fantastic analytics team. So again, this has grown massively over the 3 years I've been working at Just Eat. It started off with about 20 people when I joined. It now has over 100 people. This is made up of data scientists, BI analysts, and data warehouse engineers. We have lots of different teams. We have global teams sitting in the UK and Spain. We have individual analysts sitting within the individual countries, doing lots of local insights. And we have analysts sitting outside the analytics function, actually within like sales or marketing, doing lots of the ad hoc work that's required to function day in, day out. Unfortunately, this means we have lots of different countries, lots of different offices, lots of different functions, lots of different stakeholders, which means our analytic functions ends up looking a little bit like this. A whole load of silos. We basically weren't communicating well, we weren't sharing work, and we weren't making sure that we weren't duplicating work. And this led to a whole load of issues at Just Eat, particularly when it comes to data visualization. So analysis always had priority at Just Eat. Data visualization was always the left-behind girlfriend. If there was any thought at all put into data visualization, it was only as an afterthought. There was absolutely, it wasn't thought about at all. In fact, if there was any time allocated to dashboarding at all, it was always squeezed by the next big project that came along. If 2 weeks were allocated building a dashboard, that would quickly become 2 days when the next project came along. And of course, this led to dashboards that had some serious issues. So they might just completely miss the mark when it came to answering the business question. They might break down quickly or require a whole load of maintenance. Or like my gym membership, they might just never be used. An entire waste of money. Oh. In the 2 years I was working as a sales analyst, I'd end up repeating the same work again, again, and again, because the dashboards I built would break down or the business needs would change. This just got really, really frustrating. And of course, since we had a siloed way of working, there was a huge amount of duplication in what we did. Each individual country would have their each individual dashboard, serving the exact same business needs. So each country would have their own marketing reports, their own trade reports, their own account management dashboards, which is a huge waste of analyst time, not just in creating those dashboards, but also in maintaining them. And this led to some massive server issues, this amount of duplication. We ended up with thousands of dashboards on our server. Our server admin would do the best he could in order to try and reduce the amount of dashboards. He would delete any which weren't being used. But it seemed for every one he deleted, 2 more pop into place. And that amount of dashboards and that amount of extracts really slowed down our server and meant that we had quite long loading times. It also led to some seriously confused stakeholders. They'd go onto the server and have to find and look at all these thousands of dashboards and have no idea where to get the answers they wanted. If they did find some dashboards to answer their questions, they'd end up finding 5 different dashboards, all giving slightly different answers. They'd have 2 different dashboards with the same metric in, but giving 2 different numbers. So whether that was because it was calculated differently or because it had different data behind it, it basically meant they're getting 2 different answers to their questions, and it made them lose faith in the work we were doing as an analytics team. And even more importantly, we ended up with some seriously frustrated analysts, not just because of all the repeated work we were doing, but because a lot of the work, a lot of the analysis we were doing wasn't being properly used by the company because it wasn't being delivered properly. It wasn't being put into dashboards. So we decided to do something about this, and we created a brand spanking new team. So we created Team Data Viz. So I joined from Sales BI. Jamie got seconded in from creating some great delivery dashboards inside to stay. And Sam, who's currently filming us, joined after creating some great trade reporting. So the idea behind this team is it's really making Just Eat rethink about how we approach reporting. So changing it from that afterthought into a proper thought and making it a central part of every project. And because we are a global centralized team, it means we start to break down those silos, reduce the duplication, and make sure the best of the analysis is being used by the entire business. So we're quite lucky when we set up this team in that we're able to basically come up with our own objectives because we didn't have a CDO at the time, which was quite lucky. So our first objective we decided on was to raise our analyst game when it came to making dashboards. And so this is supposedly to try and stop the amount of broken dashboards and the amount of unused dashboards that are on the system. We want to go to the analysts and make sure that they have all the technical skills, they have all the design capabilities to really make fantastic dashboards. Basically want to act like an internal consultancy, giving people a helping hand when necessary. Secondly, we want to give data support to our colleagues outside of our data function. And so our manager, Chris Curtis, runs a fantastic program which is all about training non-analysts on how to use Tableau. It's a really good way of getting data out to your organization, so it's worth chatting to him about that one. But basically, once that program finishes, these new data chefs are a little bit abandoned. So they end up making dashboards with some horrendous data sources or joining 20 different data sources together to try and get the answers they want because they don't have that analytics support. So we want to give them that support, make sure they're using the right data and have the right training to continue making fantastic content. And the third objective we decided to look at was the one we're here talking to you about, which is creating standardized global reporting solutions. So these are going to be huge-scale solutions. These are going to be solutions that meet the core needs of Just Eat as a business, needs which are the same across all the different markets and don't change massively over time. So they're big business questions. These solutions are going to answer the entirety of business need. So you won't any longer have to switch between lots of different dashboards or tools in order to get the answers you need. They'll also be global, so it'll cut down the amount of duplication, which in turn will save a whole load of analyst time. In effect, it'll basically miraculously solve all our problems. It quickly became clear that these reporting solutions will be on a different scale to anything we've created at Just Eat before. So we decided to have a little bit of a rebrand about what we called them. So it brings us on to our first golden nugget of advice. And since we are a food tech company, our golden nuggets are delicious chicken nuggets instead.
Or tofu for your vegetarian colleagues as well.
Our first golden nugget is toolkits, not dashboards. And this is creating a distinction between the work that currently existed in Just Eat and the work we were doing to make sure that it was seen slightly differently. And the way we like to describe this difference, giving the game away. The way we like to describe this difference is imagine dashboards at Just Eat being like a plate of vitamins for your dinner. It has all the essentials. It's got like your iron, your calcium, your high-level metrics that just about answer some of the question you're looking for. However, what it doesn't have any meat. It doesn't have any context to it. It doesn't have any ability to drill down and really get to why stuff is happening. It doesn't have any ability to get actions off the back of it, so any actionability. It basically leaves you feeling hungry and needing more data. You have to go elsewhere for your main meal. You have to go to other dashboards or pester your friendly local analyst. However, toolkits are like roast dinner, pinnacle of fine dining. It's got your nutritious green bits up in the top bit. So yes, that's the high-level metrics. So it's still doing what the dashboards are doing. But what it's got lots of is it's got lots of meat. It's got lots of context. It really fills you up with data. It really lets you drill down and work out why stuff is happening. Also, everything you could ever want is on this plate, or this chopping board in this case. It really means you don't have to go between lots of different dashboards or tools in order to get the answers you need. Even better, it looks great, it smells great, it tastes great. It's a pleasure to use a toolkit. And that means that it's going to be adopted more and it's going to be used more by company. So data is going to be used more by company in general. And we found making this distinction between the existing work and the work we were doing was really important, not just because it let us build up a bit of a brand around what our team was doing and sort of make sure that what we're doing is the more trusted version, but it also made sure that we could ring-fence the time it takes to build tools of this quality and complexity. And to enable that point about the time, we created a development cycle for toolkits. Now, nothing here is like really out of the ordinary, but we just made sure that we have lots of time dedicated to planning to make sure that the development cycle goes well. And we also have time dedicated to rollout and documentation to make sure that the toolkit is used continuously. We also made sure to ask for lots of feedback once we created the initial version of the toolkit, and make sure that there is a resource available for version control. So we can constantly make updates to the toolkit and make sure that it doesn't get abandoned and always meeting the current business needs. But because we are spending 9 weeks on creating a toolkit, we need to make sure that we choose the right projects to become toolkits, which is our next golden nugget. Choose the right project. So when we set up our centralized data viz team, we immediately got swamped by everyone trying to offload all their work on us, even if it had only the slightest relationship to data visualization. So to make sure that we only chose projects that we knew would become great toolkits and are worthy of that 9-week development cycle, we asked 5 different questions of potential projects. So firstly, we asked, is the business need long-term? Since we're spending 9 weeks creating a toolkit, we need to make sure that the payoff is worth it. So we don't want to do projects which are just short-term, like measuring a campaign or a certain initiative. We want to do the long-term needs of the business. Also, we want to make sure the business need is global. So our team is all about deduplication, and the easiest way we can do that is by replacing all those market-specific dashboards that we were seeing. We also want to make sure that the data is readily available and in a good state. Now, we in the Data Viz team are pretty good with SQL, pretty good with data, but we're experts in data visualization. So when it comes to data quality, we let the analysts do that, because that is their speciality. So we'll do a lot of data work anyway with these toolkits. We will make all the data marts, we'll make a lot of the metrics, but the core data has to be in a good state. We'll also make sure that the project will have a significant audience. And this could be 100 sales guys, or it could just be the CEO. We want the toolkit to go to people who will have an impact. And our final question is the business need not being met by current solutions? So is there an opportunity to fill a gap? And this is important because, again, we are all about deduplication. If we are duplicating something that's already working perfectly well, then that's going against our key values. So with our first project, which is all about account management, we decided to call it the Restaurant Optimizer. At Just Eat, we really, really love restaurants. We wouldn't have much of a platform without them. So we want to see them grow. We want to see them do really well. We want the restaurant owners to have really easy, happy lives. So it made sense that our first project is all about restaurant account management. In our team, we also tried to reduce down the projects we take to a single business question that needs to be answered. We find this helps us keep within scope of the project and not get lost in like all the extra bits that always come along. So the business question we decided for the Restaurant Optimizer, our account management toolkit, was, when our account managers visit a restaurant, what can they talk about that will help that restaurant grow and thrive on Just Eat? So we found this just helped us stay in scope of the project. So now we've got the project set up. The first port of call is to go talk to the end users of the dashboard, our stakeholders, which is our next golden nugget. Engage your stakeholders. So this is obvious. I know you're all already engaging with your stakeholders, but it is so important that we put it up here anyway. And it is actually somewhere we fell over slightly in our Restaurant Optimizer project. So the key reason you have to, there's two key reasons you have to engage your stakeholders. The first is they are the best source of commercial insight in order to make your dashboard as actionable and interactive and insightful as possible. So it's worth talking to them as soon as possible to make sure that your plans and your designs really work well. The second reason we've got this engage your stakeholders one up here is to make sure that you engage stakeholders at the highest level. And this is where we went wrong with the Restaurant Optimizer project. With that project, we mostly just liaised with the country analysts rather than the sales directors, who are like the head honchos of the sales. We expected the country analysts would keep the sales directors up to date, or even just tell them we're doing this project, but they didn't. And that meant that when we tried to roll out this project, the sales directors were basically a bit surprised and a bit angry that they hadn't been brought along on the journey and included on the project. If we just kept them up to date, if we just told them about the project, if we just done all the stuff that we should have done, then they would have changed from detractors into adopters, and they would have ended up like these people. Happy people, happy stakeholders along on the journey of creating your toolkit. After we got and talked to our stakeholders and got all that commercial insight, we decided then to look at all the existing dashboards that created. And we found a huge, huge number of dashboards. This is only a very small amount of the account management dashboards that we found. We've actually found about 100 all in all, which just shows how much duplication was a problem at Just Eat, and also how horrible a situation the account managers had to split between all these different dashboards. You can also see there's a massive difference in terms of quality in these dashboards. So you have some great visualizations where you can easily pull out insights, but you also have a whole lot of tables which they just have to do what they can with. But all this stuff has some sort of value. Which brings on to our fourth golden nugget. Steal as much as you can. So I think I'm making this a bit more business speaky, but we are basically just stealing stuff, so went ahead of it anyway. be higher. Right. So, since our whole job is to replace existing dashboards with standardized dashboards, it would be crazy not to take advantage of the wealth of stuff that currently exists. All of that stuff has some sort of value, even if it doesn't look like it, because it always has good data sources behind it, or it has great ways of visualizing data, or it has great analysis popping it up. So it's worth taking that and expanding on it. It really cuts down the development time, because they're doing a bit of the work for you. And it also means that it's more likely to be adopted. And this is because some of the visualizations, some of the data will seem familiar to some of the markets, which means they're more likely to use it. Just make sure that you always give credit to the people who you're stealing from. But in most cases, they're quite happy that their work is being given to a larger audience.
Thank you very much, Mark. OK. So, if Tableau be the food of love, viz on. Our inspiration and muse for this account management dashboard was this fantastic toolkit built by the Spanish team. It basically was a cheat sheet that gave account managers an immediate and quick view of how a restaurant was performing against some fixed benchmarks. What we can see is we have some simple RAG indicators, red, amber, green. There's a sneaky blue one there, but let's forget about that. Some overall scores indexed out of 100, so we can track a metric's performance. The metrics are grouped by their category, and something that I really liked is it was all viewable on one page. And actually, in the background, this is processing a huge amount of data. An account manager can spend a little bit of time looking at this, know exactly the problem areas for a restaurant, and have all the tools at their disposal, well, some of the tools at their disposal to go and have the right kind of conversations with the restaurant managers to ask the right questions and get the right answers. However, in the back end, where there was a huge amount of work going on, it was really only applicable to Spain. It was kind of built for purpose, and it wasn't built to scale. Mark and I went away, we delved into the SQL behind it, and kind of lived it, breathed it. I was even dreaming in SQL at one point. It was a low point. OK, we need to talk about data. So at Just Eat, we recently underwent a major data transformation, moving from local Amazon Redshift servers to Google Cloud Platform, specifically Google BigQuery. This massively increased our opportunity for processing at a reduced cost. And just to give you an idea of the amount of data we're processing at Just Eat, every day we process 300 terabytes of data, and our orders table alone is over 1 billion rows. It's across 250 columns, and it's over 1.6 terabytes, and this is growing every day. Obviously, Tableau can't just deal with this, so we've got to do something with it. Which brings me to my first golden nugget number 5. Build datasets with Tableau in mind. Tableau is not an infinitely powerful tool. I think its calculation engine is incredible, and as I'm sure you've seen if you've been to any of the other talks here, of course you have. Basically, if you can think it in Tableau, you can do it in the calculated fields. However, when you're processing a huge amount of data, we've got to be a little bit smarter. So, here are some of my top tips. 1, we want to move as much of the logic upstream. We want basically the more data Tableau has to process, the slower the reports will function. And when you're processing a huge amount of data, we want to slim that down. So pre-calculate as much as possible. As a really simple example, if you have 2 fields in your dataset for distance and time, and you're going to have a simple calculated field, speed equals distance over time, rather than doing that in a calculated field, move it up into SQL or whichever engine you're using to process your data. Pre-calculate as much as possible. Second one, relevant columns. In that same example, if you only want to show speed, then don't even bother bringing in distance and time into your final data set. Basically, we just want to reduce that extract size. And finally, minimum level of aggregation for a toolkit. We had a bit of a semantic discussion around this, but what I mean by this is we want our final data mart, which will be optimized for the use in Tableau, to have the fewest number of rows possible. So in our example, we're dealing with restaurant data. Restaurant data will aggregate all the order information for that data. I mean, we could throw the orders into Tableau and let Tableau do all the heavy lifting, but why do that when we can do it in SQL and just have 1 row per restaurant? You could also aggregate on time, for example, rolling up to day or week or month, but this is really key for being able to process the amount of data we want to process to drive the level of insight we wouldn't have been able to do before. So all of this is just about reducing the extract size in the hope of increasing performance. And you can always think of the old patron saint of performance enhancement. There he goes, Lance Armstrong along the bottom there. So always keep him in mind. So the processing stream, rather than Atlas shrugging the world of your organization's data on his shoulders, really struggling, we want to optimize our data mart and bounce it on like a little ball on our nose. And then when you've done that in whatever you use, Alteryx, SQL Server Management Studio, a scheduling tool linked to BigQuery, Tableau prep, give yourself a seal of approval. Cheers. Oh, God. A boy can dream. So in an ideal world, the way that our data warehouse would interact with our Tableau server would look a little bit like this. We'd have events populating tables in our data warehouse, and these will be exhaustive and exhausting to go through. We would then create our optimized data mart, building on the points we just mentioned, pre-calculate, reduce the number of rows, and just bring in the relevant columns, basically reducing that extract size. We would then have a regular extract. At Just Eat, this is normally daily, because our data jobs run daily, or weekly, which will go to a published Tableau data source. The important note here is the size and complexity of this data source is what leads to the limitation on speed and performance of the reports. We then would have multiple users across the business connecting via live connection to this one published Tableau data source. This means that you don't have loads of users just creating their own data extracts and bombarding Tableau server with too many requests. However, for our account management dashboard, this was not the most appropriate solution. So we had to do something a little bit different. So this is what our toolkit output looked like. We had a summary main dashboard, which effectively looked like the Inspiration and Muse, the Spanish one we just showed you before, and it linked to subsidiary dashboards via URL filter actions, which I'll come to a little bit later. These subsidiary dashboards basically were deep dives into individual metrics. And the reason we separated this into separate workbooks is we had 3 analysts working on this at the same time. If we all did this off one master workbook with loads of data sources in there, we couldn't really work in parallel. I mean, it's quite difficult to work in parallel on the same Tableau workbook, so this really helped with that, splitting it up. So, a little aside, oh God, if the last one didn't go down well, why was the German vegetarian a pessimist and an effective dashboard creator? Does anyone have any clues, any ideas? Nope. It's because they feared the worst. I think this is hugely important, and always remember, I think this actually really did help us achieve what we wanted to achieve. We want to fear the worst. You've got to be the pessimist. Basically, in the world of data, world of development, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. Expect it to go wrong. Expect people to break what you're using. We want to build things which are robust and flexible. Fear the worst. So, as a German vegetarian pessimist, plan now, relax later. We effectively want to make our future job as easy as possible. Things are going to go wrong, we're going to have to make changes. So, Mark can rely on me to always make an ass out of you and me. So always assume there's going to be more data. So whether it's because your orders are always going to be increasing, or you're introducing a new market, basically if your Tableau report is currently struggling with the amount of data it's processing, then you need to go back and optimize the data source further. And I think really importantly, plans will change. Always assume plans are going to change. We want to make our reports in the back end and in the Tableau actual workbooks themselves as flexible as possible. So if we need to roll out a new change, we can do that with minimum admin overhead. Make our future job as easy as possible. So, coming back to our master toolkit of workbooks, we would basically have one version of each workbook that we would maintain. Each of these would have their own data extract, which would be optimized for that particular workbook. However, we're actually rolling out to multiple countries. So our actual toolkit output looks like this, but actually with even more. So on this view, we're actually uploading 30 workbooks. Because a user in France, an account manager in France, doesn't need to see data in the UK. So that's one way they can reduce their extract size, by limiting it to France. Now, we run into a little bit of a problem here, because what we would have liked to have done, what we don't want, is to have a UK workbook, a French workbook, an Italian workbook. Because then when we go and make the change, because we're German vegetarian pessimists who fear the worst, and changes will happen, we'd have to make that across 6 workbooks and upload, and that's an absolute nightmare. So we have our master version, and what we tried to do originally was use Tableau's replace data source. So we'd have a UK data source, a France data source, which were all identical in columns, obviously different information, and we click Tableau replace data source. However, this was a little bit of a problematic pickle. So the replacing data source foible. What happens when you replace data source is that you lose any attributes associated with the value in a field. What that means is that if we have a field like this one, really simple, order status type. It can be 3 values, null, bad, or good. I've assigned a shape to this value in Tableau. Good is a tick, cross is null, cross is bad, triangle is null. When I've gone to replace data source, all the information in the back end has changed, but we've lost any attribute associated with the value in a field. So afterwards, it goes to this. I'm sure some of you have seen this before. You get that default Tableau shapes, which can be so frustrating, because that means not only have we got to download the full extract when you do a replace data source, but suddenly we've got to go back and change all our shapes. And we're building global, gorgeous, gold standard toolkits where there's loads of shapes and custom colors attributed to values in a field. So that's just not feasible. So we had to go away and have a think about this. And yeah, how is this done? Well, have no fear, because parameters are here. Parameters are your best friend. They'll pick you up when you're down. They'll make your life easier. They won't ghost you. They're great. Big fan of parameters, dogs and Newcastle United. So what we did is we created these parameterized data sources. So rather than connecting to just the UK data source on the left-hand side, we've unioned all the data together. And we're using custom SQL. And it actually couldn't get much more simple than this. So what we have on the right-hand side is our custom SQL is select all for the data mart for the summary one, where country code equals a parameter, and that parameter is just the 2 letters for the country. Now what happens is when let's say we make the changes to the workbook, someone complained about a metric being calculated incorrectly, or they wanted to introduce something new, we make that change. We then, I don't know, default would probably be UK, because we're working in the UK data, it's the largest data set. We would then just click parameter, FR, France, upload to the French site, and actually, you don't need to download the full data extract. When it actually uploads to the French site, it will be uploading pointing to the UK data, but as soon as the refresh runs on the server, it will say, select all from this table where country equals France. Boom, all your data is now French. Your attributes associated with the field values have stayed the same. Oh, our life was so much easier. It doesn't take 5 minutes to download each data extract. We can roll out changes super quickly. And the fun doesn't stop there. So if you remember earlier, I mentioned that all our workbooks are connected by URL filter actions. We didn't want to keep all the dashboards in the same individual workbook because we wanted to work on them separately, and it's just easier to separate it out. If something breaks, you know where to fix it. It's not going to slow down the whole workbook. So these parameters are hugely useful there. So parameterized linking. When you click dashboard actions, you can have the option for URL actions. This is effectively when you click on a sheet. So at the moment, on the summary dashboard, if we click on the sheet basket, it's going to go to this URL. This URL, there's a feature which we did not use effectively at Just Eat in the past. And that is, you can open a dashboard to have a filter specified in the URL. So we can open one of our subsidiary dashboards straight to the restaurant that we're already looking at. So our URL is effectively the string for the URL for that dashboard with a parameter in there for the country code. So as soon as we change country, this parameterized link updates dynamically where the restaurant we're looking at equals, the field of the restaurant equals the restaurant that we're looking at. This joins all our workbooks together and makes it completely dynamic. So as soon as we change the parameter, they're now pointing to the right dashboard. So this is parameterized madness. Without going into too much detail here, what's highlighted in yellow are my parameters. So you can see I've got a site, that would be UAT or prod. And as German vegetarian pessimists, we have feared the worst. We want to plan now to relax later, make our job as easy as possible. And effectively, this is the code we put in. And at the bottom, you can see what it looks like. If I were to change to France, this would now point to the French version of the book, and it would open up that report. And oh boy, did that make our life easier. Real top tip, I thought anyway. So, moving away from the technical side, building a uniform brand. We had a style sheet which just had font sizes, font colors, padding. We always use tiled. We don't really like floating because we like things to be pixel perfect, and just a style sheet that we could keep consistent across our workbooks. The other thing we did is we wanted to make our report stand out a little bit. We've done a huge amount of work in the back end, and often some end users don't necessarily see that, especially if you were to give them a kind of default Tableau view. They'll just think, oh, this is just another report. It actually helped to increase adoption by making it look a little bit different, by making it stand out. And one of the ways we did this was introducing our own color scheme. So this is something which you can find more info about it on the Tableau website, but effectively, in your My Tableau repository folder, which is in My Documents, there's a preferences.tps file. You can open that in your favorite text editor, whatever you want to do, and basically add in hex codes. So you can see this is the one from a Tableau website. They've got my categorical palette, and they've added in some hex codes. It's super duper easy to do, more info on the site. But my top tip is these two websites on the left-hand side here, color.adobe.com and coolers, I think it's pronounced, I don't know, .co, where basically designers and artists have uploaded some themes and swatches with colors that really complement each other. And that's the one that I use. Some of those colors you'll see on dashboards coming up. The other thing we do is we have our logo. So this not only tells everyone that this is our gold standard global reporting solution, it hopefully will increase awareness of the good work we're doing. So when they see it, they'll know, OK, good work, Data Viz. We'll give you more resources. You can get stuck into more things. But also, if they have any issues, they know who to talk to about it. It's just about creating that brand. And let's see version 1 of the report then. Cool. So this is just a screenshot of it. As you can see, in structure, it's very similar to our Spanish inspiration and muse. We have all the metrics in these little red, amber, green circles, index numbers out of 100. We've added a few things in here, information about the restaurant that we're looking at, the breakdown of it, and obviously what stands out is we have this dark color scheme, which is quite, with a wet asphalt, I think the color is called, background, which is quite different to most of the dashboards that we have at Just Eat. But it was not quite the gold standard that we wanted. We wanted to get some feedback on it. So
yeah.
back to Mark.
So the next stage was to go out and get feedback, because we didn't want to roll out that first version of the dashboard. We thought we could do a bit better.
Oh, sorry.
So yes, we wanted to go out and get feedback from all those different stakeholders we had. And we had a whole load of stakeholders as part of the Restaurant Optimizer project. We had account managers, we had the country analysts, we had the sales directors, and everyone in between. So when we reached out for feedback, we got a huge amount of feedback. So much so, we had to come up with a mini strategy about how we approached it all, otherwise we would have got completely swamped. The first thing we did was we rejected absolutely everything that wasn't relevant to that business question we had before. We made sure we stayed in scope. Lots of those ideas were absolutely fantastic. They would have really helped account managers do much better jobs, but they weren't related to helping restaurants. So with those, we just took a note of them, because often we then rolled them into other toolkits we made. But we made sure to respond to the people who are doing the feedback, to make sure they stayed engaged with the whole feedback process. Once we got rid of the not relevant feedback, we found the rest of the feedback fell onto a graph quite like this. So it ranged from stuff relating to content, so what's in the dashboard, to stuff relating to design, so how it looks, and stuff related to from objective functionality to subjective preference. So an example of some of the feedback we got would be, this dashboard can't function without this. And so this is related to content and functionality. And basically, anything that fell into this category, we immediately put into the dashboard, because if the dashboard literally can't function without it, then we need to stick it in there. On the other end of the spectrum, we had stuff related to preference and design, such as, I don't like the color scheme. With stuff like this, we applied the following golden nugget to it. Trust your expertise. So you guys are the data visualization experts. When it comes to design, you know best, basically, especially when it comes to preference. Lots of the time, when a stakeholder has some feedback based on design and preference, it's based on what they are used to. So if they're used to getting a table of data and then pumping it into Excel and doing all this stuff themselves, that's what they want to keep. They hate change. But as soon as you start explaining all those wonderful design features of your wonderful interactive dashboard, they'll soon come around and adopt it. So definitely trust your expertise. With the rest of the feedback, such as we want this metric calculated this way, or I don't understand how to interact with a dashboard, we had to be a little bit more intelligent with how we approached the feedback. We couldn't just say, no, we know best. And that brought up our next golden nugget, which is compromise when necessary. Now, this seems like I'm immediately contradicting my previous point, but it's different types of feedback, basically. So with bits like this, in most cases, you're not the end user of your dashboard. So it's often that amazing design feature that you think looks really cool and is really interactive actually makes the dashboard completely unusable to the end user. You know when you actually go and ask them about it. One example of this with the restaurant optimizer was about that fantastic black background, which looks amazing and really makes all the colors stand out. But when we went back to the sales team and talked to them about this, what we didn't realize is some of them still live in the previous century and love to print out their dashboards and give them to their restaurant partners. So obviously, that is a key bit of functionality that they wanted to keep. So in order to compromise, we put a printer button in the top corner, which links through to a dashboard with a white background, so they can print it off if they want to.
Yeah, we placed this kind of passive-aggressive message about thinking about the environment, which maybe used to be a little bit more aggressive, but Mark made me turn it down a little bit.
Once we've finished with all the feedback and implementing all the changes we went on to the final stage, which is arguably the most important, which is rollout. We really took any opportunity to sell the product as much as possible because we want it to be adopted. If the product isn't adopted, then we wasted the previous 7 weeks of work, basically. So we made sure we took any opportunity at all. We went to sales conferences, we went to management meetings and team meetings, we made training sessions and training videos, and even did like competitions for the sales team to use it. Really took any opportunity at all to sell it. We also found it important not just to sell the individual toolkits, but also to sell what we're doing as a team. Which brings us on to our final golden nugget. Sell the dream. So we found it was incredibly useful not just to sell the individual toolkits, but sell what we're doing as a whole. And that's because if you're just selling the toolkit, then you're just selling that one project. If you're selling your standardization journey, then you're selling every toolkit that you're ever going to give to that stakeholder. So we made sure that even though they don't care about lots of the benefits of our standardization journey, they don't care about the analyst happiness, they don't care that they don't have to repeat work or that they'll live happier lives. They do care about the stuff that does affect them. So they care that they'll be able to find the answers they want more easily, or they'll have lower load times, or just better analysis. So it's worth selling that dream to them.
Great stuff. OK, so now we're going to try a live demo where nothing can possibly go wrong. So just please take into account I'm connected via VPN on the conference Wi-Fi. But let's have a look at this then. Fantastic. OK. So here we have the Restaurant Optimizer summary. What I've done is I've uploaded to the UAT site. I wanted to show you how quickly it ran with the full data set. All I've done is anonymize it a little bit. This would normally have the name of the restaurant, but GDPR terrifies me. It was like Millennium Bug as a kid. I used to have nightmares about it, like insects coming out my computer. Ugh. But no, GDPR terrifies me. So I've tried to anonymize it. If you do see a restaurant name, you didn't see it. But this is with the full data set. So let's have a look at this. On the top left, we have the Just Eat logo, Restaurant Optimizer summary. Below that, because I think that's what they say, your eyes are always drawn to the top left and you work your way down, we have the restaurant name. And we can highlight over there to get some more information. We try to make all our tooltips as informative as possible. So here we can see how many Indian restaurants there are in the country, how many there are in that specific city, which I've anonymized, and how many Indian restaurants there are in that city. We have this big number here, the restaurant activation score. So these big numbers really stand out. I can see it's red. Then over to the right-hand side, we can see what it needs to move into orange. So at the moment, it has a score of 30, and it needs a score of between 40 to 75 to move into yellow-orange, and at least 75 to move into green. Each of these scores are made up of the components below it. So you can immediately see we have this branding. Super duper simple. Is it present? Is it not present? We can see here it's got some of them, but obviously these seem to be more important, hence it only has a score of 30. And below that, we have additional metrics, which are important, however, don't contribute to the score at the top. So let's go into the middle section, because I think this is where the fun really happens. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to change restaurant to one of my favorites. Oh, where is it? Oh, sorry, I've got the wrong year. It's 19994. It's much easier to remember the actual restaurant name than all these IDs. OK, so let's look at this middle section here. We had the restaurant setup score, and you saw how quickly that loaded. And that's because we've really optimized our data mart. This has processed in the background billions of rows of data. It's a huge amount, and we've optimized it 1 row per restaurant to make it as quick as possible. So we can see here we have the delivery fee. I'm going to go over here. So we can see I've got a score of 10 and a median value of £2. One of the things we've tried to do with this is move away from average. So a question that would get asked a lot at Just Eat is, what is the average order? And I think what they really mean is, what is the typical order? Because the average order value itself can be hugely skewed by, this is the classic case. And we tried to move towards medians. Now, calculating a median or any kind of percentile is phenomenally computationally complex. To some extent, it's a kind of level of detail calculation, which you need to join back onto your kind of data set. This would be incredibly slow to do in Tableau, but we've done all the processing in the back end. BigQuery can chug along and do all that, and we can just reap the benefits here. So we can see it has a score of 10. We've got this cute little Art Deco visualization. We can see a value of £2 there. We need a value of £1.50 or less to move into orange, and less than £1 to move into green. We can also see the little definition of what this is about, and a little light bulb to say click for more details. So, conscious of time, I'm just going to show you a couple here. So time offline, a score of 0 and 10%. I'm just going to click on this, and this is live processing the data, effectively filtering it, using that URL filter. And we can see here, I'm just going to zoom in. Beautiful. OK. We can see here the last 4 weeks of offline for this one restaurant. Immediately, this account manager has in one place issues going on here. We can see this orange section. So we can go to the bottom and see temp offline, actioned by Just Eat or through ignored orders, or the service team. Seems to be happening pretty consistently on a Monday around, let's highlight over there, 5 p.m. So now the account manager can go away and ask the right questions, give the right answers, and get all of this immediately in under 2 minutes, talking points for the conversation. The other one I really want to show you is this delivery area one, because I think this really, really highlights how powerful it can be to do all those pre-calculations and optimize data marts, because we can get a level of insight that we would never have had before at Just Eat. So this delivery area score is effectively going to show us the missing order opportunity for that restaurant based off of where it delivers to. And the way we've built this data source is cross-join all the orders in that 1.6 billion row table, cross-join that onto the restaurants table where the orders are within a certain radius of this restaurant. It's an obscene amount of data being processed to get this. And we end up with what I think is a beautiful looking dashboard. Cool. So what we have here is a view of typical orders over the last few days for this restaurant. It's actually in Edinburgh. It's located here at this gold star. So that's where the restaurant is. And we have 3 different marks, other marks on this dashboard. We have these little white circles, which are actual orders from this restaurant. So we can see here, this one was 2.8 kilometers away from the restaurant. Whereas this one right here, only 186 meters. Really should have just gone to collect that one, shouldn't they? So these blue crosses are orders to other restaurants in the area to which this restaurant delivers. So effectively, maybe they've ordered Indian food, maybe they've chosen a different cuisine because this is a Chinese restaurant. But these are areas in which they deliver to. That shows you where people are located. Now, what the red crosses are orders nearby this restaurant that this restaurant does not deliver to. So we've done some polygon calculations in the back end. But what this has meant is we can see some interesting patterns. Now, the account manager, who has that domain knowledge and knows Edinburgh well, will know that this line here represents access to, I think, the Old Town, which I think is just a bit of a nightmare to deliver to. So understand why they wouldn't deliver there. But what we can see here, we have this lovely little residential conurbation here, EH2, only 1.6 kilometers away. I mean, they're happy to go 2.8 down here. This is a missing order opportunity. This is the kind of insight they couldn't have before, and it loaded so quickly. I mean, that was less than 5 seconds through a VPN in another country, on the Wi-Fi, and live, you know? I'm a German vegetarian pessimist, so I'm fearing the worst, expecting it all to go wrong. But yeah, that is... I'm going to stop the demo there and put it back to the presentation. But if you do have any more questions about this, you can catch us afterwards.
Yeah, a bit more of a demo.
Yeah, a bit more of a demo. So let me hopefully get this right. Ah, fantastic.
Cool, so now it's time for us to toot our own horn and say what success Restaurant Optimizer has been. So we went back to the account managers and got their feedback on how they liked the Restaurant Optimizer, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive, as you can see there. And not only that, it's actually helped with our goal of deduplication. So the Restaurant Optimizer now has 500 views per week, and just in the UK, it's more globally. But even better, it's reduced the amount of old dashboard usage that it's replacing by 80%. And that means that soon we'll be able to retire those dashboards completely, really sort of deduplicating the server. It also saved a huge amount of account manager time. So you saw how quickly Jamie managed to get some insights out of that. So before, they were spending up to 20 minutes, half an hour planning for each visit they did each day. Now that's been reduced so much that we've saved time equal to 16 full-time employees across the globe. And even better, as a personal success,
absolutely, my favorite one.
Sam got an email the other week from someone quite senior asking, is there a Data Viz dashboard for this? Which really shows that what we're doing as a team is starting to be appreciated by the company, and people are starting to recognize our brand. So here are all the golden nuggets in all their glory. Toolkits, not dashboards. We want that cohesive connection of workbooks. Choosing the right project even, long-lasting, global toolkits which fit a business need, which hopefully, well, not hopefully, is not currently being answered. Engaging your stakeholders. Get them in from the start, senior and junior. Make them go from, what's the word we use? Detractors to advocates. I love that. Steal as much as you can. Beg, steal, and borrow. Keep them on board, but basically we are going to build something that is greater than the sum of its parts. Let all the great work that has been done by your analysts across the globe not go to waste, not be decrepit. Actually incorporate it into this solution. Build data sets with Tableau in mind. We're basically trying to reduce the extract size so we can get the most amount out of Tableau and basically process the most amount of information to drive the deepest level of insight. Plan now, relax later. We are the German vegetarian pessimists. We fear the worst. Things are going to go wrong. You're going to have to change things. Whether that involves incorporating parameters or whatever, we want to make our future job as easy as possible to maintain. Building a uniform brand, get that color scheme, get that theme, make sure people know who you are, so they know, hopefully, that it's going to be good quality work, and also they can ask questions like, have you got a Data Viz one for this? Trust your expertise. You are the Data Viz experts. Some people are stuck in the past and don't like change. With a little bit of nudging and training and the right type of tutorials, they can really be brought on board to use the toolkits that you build to get the greatest insight out of the data and information. Compromise when necessary. Sometimes you are just going to have to put in that little white page. You can always add the note for that, the catharsis. And finally, sell the dream. So really communicate out the winnings. What the team's doing, yep.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming to this talk. Please do give feedback. I think it's both of our first times ever kind of presenting to a big group. So any feedback would be great, and really hope that's been useful. I've been Jamie, or James.
Yeah, I've been Mark. Do we have time for questions? I guess so.
I think we do have time for questions.
Yeah, any questions?